It is about to begin, or I should say it has begun. Nancy Pelosi's plane has turned north and is now heading towards Taipei, Taiwan. China, of course, is pissed. They are saber-rattling something fierce, driving tanks around, making threats. But I got to be honest, I don't think anything is going to happen. I do not believe that China is going to risk destroying their already fragile economy because one U.S. official is headed towards Taiwan. It's not going to change a whole lot. Communication can happen between the U.S. and Taiwan via digital uplink. They can Zoom if they want to. And when did Zoom happen? Just use Skype. But China's saber rattling probably because they want to just make a point. They're not going to do anything. However, this story here and everything that's happening, there's been a lot developing. We've had a bomb threat at the airport where Nancy Pelosi is supposedly going to be landing. I think what we're seeing here is China is getting ready to take Taiwan, and everyone knows it, and the U.S. knows it. And I think that's why Nancy Pelosi is headed there. Taiwan, of course, is where we source a large portion, if not the majority, of our silicon chips. We need them. And there's been a chip shortage in the past couple of years. It's why it's so hard to get cars. You go to car dealerships, and they don't have any. It's affecting everything. Many people were saying, we had some super chats in Timcast IRL the other night, where people were saying that the reason Nancy Pelosi is going to Taiwan is to have a meeting with these chip makers who are setting up a production facility in Arizona. And that says to me, probably to a lot of people, and based on what we've seen already with China's actions, Taiwan will fall, and it will fall soon, and the U.S. will be unable to defend it. Now, there still is a real possibility that something happens triggering a military conflict. Nancy Pelosi is 82 years old, and you got to wonder why it is that she's going here right now. As I mentioned, if she wanted to have a conversation with these chip manufacturers, she doesn't need to do it in person. Maybe they're concerned about security of their private conversations, Chinese interception or something like that, which is probably going to happen. Why didn't they bring Taiwanese officials to the United States instead? Why go to Taiwan? I don't know. I don't think anything will happen, but there is a fear that something could happen. And it's not China, or it could be China. I'll put it this way. We have this story here. Let me read this first from Newsweek. Nancy Pelosi bomb threat at Taiwan airport sparks investigation. It may be a big nothing burger. Basically what happened is a letter was received making a bomb threat. I don't know if there's any real security concern related to that, but I'm sure Taiwan is taking this more seriously than anything else they've taken, any other political trip in a long time. They've called back soldiers. They're rejecting leave. They're saying prepare for war. And there is a real fear this could be a catalyst for World War III. China, of course, as I mentioned, saber rattling, driving their tanks through the streets and through their beaches. Look at these images, man. This is crazy stuff. But I'll tell you this. I don't think China would be willing to nuke their own economy because Pelosi is visiting. But what's to stop one rogue actor from taking action which sparks an international conflict? This is the sad reality of the world, my friends. With the Ukraine-Russia conflict right now, you need to understand there are U.S. citizens in Ukraine fighting this war. And we hear it all the time. The other day, we had Mark Meckler and Rick Santorum on Timcast IRL. Mark said, if we can use U.S. dollars to fund, Ukraine and take on a serious adversary, Russia, he's for it as long as there's no U.S. boots on the ground. And my attitude is kind of like, what's the difference? What's the difference? Seriously, you've got U.S. soldiers, U.S. veterans, I should say, on the ground fighting this war. And the U.S. is just like, we're not touching you. We're not touching you. Yeah, but they're U.S. trained resources, weapons, people on the ground. What do you think happens if some quote unquote rogue actor takes action against Nancy Pelosi? Will we get a Franz Ferdinand type situation? And why is Nancy Pelosi going here? I mean, look, I can respect it. It's a bold move asserting Taiwanese sovereignty and U.S. support for Taiwan. I can respect that. But I just, there are difficult questions when it comes to war that I don't have the answers to. A lot of people are saying, no war, no foreign invasion, all of these things. I'm not a big fan of what the U.S. does overseas. But the reality is it's because they've not justified it to the American people. They keep the secrets and then say, we can do what we want and we're supposed to blindly support you? If the U.S. has a legitimate reason for foreign conflict, I'm interested in hearing that. But they never do have one. I don't think you could be so blind as just be like, we should allow China and Russia to just sweep across the planet and enslave other countries. I take a look at the Cold War. There's a real conversation to be had about U.S. involvement in Southeast Asia when it comes to the expansion of the Soviet Union. There's a real scary thought. The Soviet Union was expanding. They were enslaving people, basically, with communism. The United States, for all its faults, it ain't that bad. It's actually the best, what's the saying? Democracy is, what's the quote? It's like, it's the best worst system or something to that effect. It's a terrible system, but it's the best one that we have. There's a bunch of people that say that. We're not legitimately a democracy. We're a constitutional republic with democratic institutions, but you get the point. For all the problems America has, we recognize it's the best. So far, we can probably do better, but not if we let these lunatics take over. So we're watching the Soviet Union expand, and the U.S. wants to stop it. I think about this scenario. Having grown up, I was born at the end of the Soviet era that lasted for 69 years. What would have happened if there was no U.S. pushback to the Soviets? Could the Soviets have continued to expand? One day, then the United States would be surrounded by a global Soviet empire? Sure, we can secure our borders and defend ourselves, but only for so long. You look at what's going on with like North Korea or Iran and how the U.S. can sanction them. You look at, and there's an ideological difference. The U.S. says what you're doing we don't like, so therefore we're not going to allow goods to enter your country. That would happen to us if we were existing in a Soviet unipolar world. So here's the harsh reality. To what extent are we willing to tolerate U.S. foreign intervention? I'm not a fan of it. I think the U.S. is full of it. I think for the most part, it's this idea of destroying a country so that we can get cheap oil to Europe. This is the problem. You want to complain about the Soviets? Let's bring it to contemporary times. You want to complain about Chinese expansion in Africa and South America? Fine. The Belt and Road Initiative, all of this stuff, there's concerns for us. But does that justify the U.S. destroying other countries? Does this justify the U.S. involvement in Ukraine? I like, to a certain degree, the turn we've seen with soft power. Soft power, I think, is all right. It's not perfect. There's always going to be conflict, but I prefer soft power. That is, I go to you and I say, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million. Let's make things, work for us. It's better. It's not great. It's an intervention upon self-determination of a nation. But Russia invading Ukraine, bombs, guns, missiles, you lost the influence war. I just don't think there's a utopian world where we can avoid any of this stuff. I really, really don't. I think the U.S. has failed to legitimately justify what they do. I think the military-industrial complex, large war machines, the war machine, they support this stuff for the sake of churning economic profit. This is the problem. If you want to come and convince me there's a legitimate reason for a foreign intervention, you need to do so. But they've not done it in my lifetime. So when Donald Trump was getting our troops out of the Middle East, shoring up American defenses, and telling Europe, you better pay your bills, I said, thank you. Good. Peace in the Middle East, trying to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula, good news. I don't know what Nancy Pelosi is doing. I can respect it in that it's a bold move, but I don't know that this solves anything. If they expect Taiwan to fall to China regardless, and that's why they're going to be moving silicon plants to the United States, why? Do this. There's some other scary thoughts. Maybe it's a secret evacuation mission. Maybe that's the real reason they're doing it. Oh, it's just Nancy Pelosi coming in. Oh, it's crazy. And in reality, they're going to get Taiwanese officials out of there and executives. Maybe. They could leave if they wanted to. Here's the story from the Daily Mail. Beijing masses tanks on beaches opposite Taiwan and warns U.S. politicians they will come to no good end if they play with fire as Pelosi's jet leaves Kuala Lumpur with U.S. warships positioned off island's east coast. So I just don't see anything happening. But again, I want a Franz Ferdinand type situation, man. It could be a single actor that can make everything go crazy. A furious Beijing today warned U.S. politicians they will come to no good end if they play with fire over Taiwan, as video emerged purportedly showing tanks lined up on the beaches opposite the island. Chilling footage shared on Chinese social network Weibo appears to show amphibious tanks on the coast of Fujian, along the Taiwan Strait. Further footage shows military equipment on the move in the city of Xiamen. The unverified videos emerged amid soaring tensions between China and U.S., with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi expected to touch down in Taipei at 2:20 p.m. GMT today. So that's happening now, basically, isn't it? I mean, they're super close. Pelosi would be the highest-ranking U.S.-led official to visit Taiwan since 1997. Her jet left the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur on Tuesday morning, according to flight tracking website Flight Radar 24 and witnesses. Beijing earlier warned that the U.S. will pay the price if Pelosi visits Taiwan, while Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said on Tuesday that those U.S. politicians who play with fire on the Taiwan issue will come to no good end. Moscow also weighed in and accused the U.S. of destabilizing the world by allowing Pelosi to visit Taiwan. Okay, rogue actor. Maybe there's some Chinese zealot. I don't think sentiment in Taiwan is all 100% pro-Taiwan. You've probably got some people who dissent. It's normal. What will it take for one person to do something crazy? You know, building a machine is difficult. A house of cards. You take a deck of cards, you start building it up. Delicate, difficult to pull off, could fall apart at any time. But you maintain it. One person can blow and the whole thing comes crumbling down. You flick a card at it, the whole thing comes crumbling down. Building a machine is difficult. A single loose screw in the machine can destroy the entire thing. What I mean to say is, one crazy person doing one crazy thing could be the catalyst, a butterfly effect for a major international conflict. They say, amid the intensifying warnings from China over Pelosi's visit, 4 U.S. warships, including the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, were positioned in the waters east of Taiwan on routine deployments. Now, this is what I'm told. It is routine. Some people think that the deployment of the Ronald Reagan and the strike group to the South China Sea is like, oh man, they're getting ready for something. And maybe, but it is routine. They do it quite often. U.S. Navy official said the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli was also in the area as part of a deployment to the region that started in early May from its home port of San Diego. Taipei has vowed to defend itself and dispatch its military forces in reaction to enemy threats as risk of Beijing attacking Taiwan grows. Taiwan has also made strengthening its defense a priority with regular military and civil defense drills, including designating air raid shelters where civilians can take cover if Beijing launches missiles at the democratic island. Self-governed Taiwan's 23 million people live under the constant threat of invasion by authoritarian China, which views the island as its territory and has vowed to one day seize it by force if necessary. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because all signs indicate that it will. And I'm not saying it should. Take a look at these photos. Tanks patrolling down the beaches as Chinese citizens are on the beach. It's crazy stuff, man. Look at these photos of tanks lining the streets. Further footage shows military equipment on the move in the Chinese city of Xiamen. Here we go, man. Amid the intensifying warnings from China over Pelosi's visit, 4 U.S. ships, including the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, were positioned in the waters east of Taiwan on routine deployments. Something else is happening today. A big primary, a major primary. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. I don't think it does. We've had many primaries. It's not the general election. If Nancy Pelosi were going to do something like this right before the general, I might think that we're looking at some kind of distraction. But I have to wonder if this really is because Taiwan is expected to fall relatively soon. Joe Biden came out and he was talking about the need to build a new factory in the United States, silicon chips, indicative of the fall of Taiwan. I don't believe that Joe Biden, the United States, has the wherewithal currently under its current leadership to defend Taiwan. I think China knows it. I think Russia knew it with Ukraine. I think they saw with Donald Trump being out, now's their only chance. If DeSantis or Trump gets in, it is going to be a lost opportunity for these countries. If Donald Trump wins in 2024, China will never get Taiwan. It just won't happen because Donald Trump is a madman in both the good and bad ways. And there was that viral video where Trump was speaking on the phone and he said something like, he told Beijing, he told China, the CCP, if you take Taiwan, I will nuke Beijing. He told Russia, if you take Ukraine, I will nuke Moscow. And he said, maybe they don't believe it, but 5% chance. 5% chance they did. They backed off. Isn't that something? They did. Russia went nowhere near Ukraine. I mean, granted, they're in Crimea. My point is they backed off. And then it was only when Joe Biden gets in, all of this falls apart. You know, we talk about Western decline and the United States falling apart. But I got to say, my friends, it feels like it's global. The people of the United States were willing to sacrifice international order and peace because they hate the orange man. Because the powers that be that in the United States, the corrupt elites like Nancy Pelosi could not take it that Donald Trump was the president and the American people had voted. They can't stand it. They are the better men, the elites who should be in charge of you. But under Donald Trump, his foreign policy, pretty damn good. Getting our troops out of a botched Middle Eastern incursion. Trying to get our troops out of Syria. Good things. Oh, I know all about the Qatar-Turkey pipeline destabilizing Syria. Stupid. Unjustified. And you can talk about the deep state, the administrative state. But we need to get cheap energy into Europe because we need the European Union to have economic development to compete with China. Otherwise, China takes over. Don't you understand? Yeah, I totally do. And you failed to explain any of this properly to the American people, and they voted against you. They voted against your stupid wars, your ridiculous plans, and your failure to adequately explain. You do not get to just do whatever you want because you think you are right. And I'm talking about these deep state people who think, you know what? We can destabilize an entire region. We can bring about death and destruction because we're going to build a pipeline into Europe so we can offset the Russian Gazprom gas monopoly. At least that's the assumed reason, considering the fact that Germany has not gotten itself off of Russian gas and found alternatives, and they're shutting down nuclear plants. These people are out of their minds. There is no justification for the wars they engage in. It all seems to be, in the end, profit. Because if you come to me and say, look, Tim, we're going to be building this pipeline from Qatar through Syria and Turkey into Europe because they're choking us out on gas prices. The European Union needs to develop economically faster with cheaper and more gas and access to gas. Otherwise, China as an economic bloc is going to take over and we're going to unipolar Chinese communist world. It's a bad thing, right? Yes, I agree. The only problem is, what the are you doing with nuclear power? What are you doing with any of this stuff? Why aren't you developing drilling? Why aren't you expanding oil production in the United States? Donald Trump was doing that. Your reasoning makes no sense. I sit here and I read this stuff, and I can tell you one thing. I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes with confidential and top secret information. And you need me to understand why you want foreign incursions, and you can't do it. And now you need to understand, if you can't convince the likes of me, you're not convincing the average American, and they just want to make America great again. So they vote for Donald Trump. And I say, good. Y'all deserve it. Because I really do believe the goal of all of this with the foreign intervention garbage is to make money for a handful of massive corporations under the guise of, well, it's good for the American economy. Get good old American-made tanks. Sure. And then we sell it to Saudi Arabia. For what reason? You've not justified it. So I tell you this. If they came out and they said, definitively, with real evidence, something we could really trust, which is almost impossible to do, that Russia was doing something untoward, I'd say, okay, let's draw up our defenses. But then they come to us and they say, it's untoward towards Ukraine. And I say, what does Ukraine have to do with us? Now, if they came out and said, Ukraine is an ally, we are seeking to court Ukraine to join the European Union. Ukraine, if they came out and said, we've been working really, really hard and Russia's making moves to upend our policies, I'd say, okay, I'm listening. The only issue is they don't want Ukraine joining because their economy is no good. Look, we're dealing with international conflict, and you need to prove to me that our involvement in a war is worth what Ukraine would give to us. The European Union, Latvia, Estonia, NATO countries, we've expanded a great deal. At what point do you say it's enough? Are we really worried about Russia? Are we really worried that much about Ukraine? Russia's not going to gain sizable power. China is the bigger threat. Of course, we're worried about that too. I think you've got a problem. The United States is run by an administrative state. The president has much less power than people realize. Donald Trump is evidence of that. But the American people still have the ability to vote and to change things. And they sacrificed global stability because they hated Trump, and the best they could do was Biden. The old world is failing. The old guard, deep state, bureaucratic garbage is failing. And you know what? Good riddance. You deserve it. Because you have not inspired us. You have not built. Look, there is no unified culture in this country. And what do the elites do? They go for wokeness. That's not making things better. You want America to win? Then you champion America, but you've not done that. And that's why I don't believe any of these people are justified. I don't believe there is justification for anything they're doing with these conflicts. I believe when you look at all the evidence, they are selling us out and they are gutting this country to make a profit while the whole thing sinks. And maybe that's what Nancy Pelosi is really doing. Go to Taiwan so that you can talk about selling out our interests. I don't trust them one bit. Donald Trump, I think for all his faults, for all his problems, a lack of decorum, his naughty words and potty mouth, he really did want to make America better. And we had a great economy. And this is what I would just wish Donald Trump would do. Tell people before the pandemic, things were better than ever. The economy was roaring. Unemployment was down. America was improving. Tell them that message. Remind them of what it was like before Joe Biden came in and just burned it to the ground. We'll see where this goes. I don't think anything's going to happen, but we'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.